Our iceberg is melting is a fable that takes place on an iceberg in Antarctica, inhabited by a colony of highly advanced penguins. The story describes how one penguin, Fred, was able to convince his colony's leadership council that their home was in danger of breaking apart in the coming winter due to internal melting of the iceberg. The council then goes through a series of steps to communicate the problem to the rest of the colony and set out to find a solution. The colony faces many challenges throughout the process of change, a major theme being the denial of the problem by some members and the resistance to change from others. By working together and using the strengths of individuals in the group, the colony is able to navigate their way through their turbulent times. By observing how others, like the seagulls, deal with similar situations, they were able to develop a new scout program in order to search for a new home. The colony learns to handle change more effectively as they take on a completely new nomadic lifestyle in order to preserve the existence of their colony. Throughout the story, the penguins address their problem through the author John Cotter's 8-step process for successful change. The first step is to create a sense of urgency within the group, in order to make others understand there is a need for change. This acts as motivation for the group to buy into the change. The penguins did this by bringing together the whole colony as soon as the council recognized that there was definitely a problem with their home. They modeled for the population what they predicted would happen to the iceberg in the winter. This created a sense of alarm among the penguins, but served the purpose of making them realize there was a real problem going on. Next, the head penguin put together his guiding team, each with their own strengths, in order to work on a solution to the problem. The team consisted of Lewis, Alice, Buddy, Fred, and the professor. Though they started out, quote-unquote, heading in different directions, the head penguin was able to get them to work together by first creating a bond over lunch, then allowing them to work together on the problem. When the team decided on the plan of scouting for a new iceberg, they were creating the vision and the plan for the change. This meant a huge change in lifestyle for all of the colony, so they would have to be sure to clearly communicate their plan to the public. When it did come to communicating their plan, they turned to Buddy, who could explain what the team had learned from the seagull in terms that all the penguins could understand. They also advertised their vision through posters where all the penguins would see them, so that the change that was going to occur could not be ignored. Committees began to form to prepare for the next steps. Even the young penguins began to play a role in the lifestyle changes that were going to happen in order for the scouting plan to be a success. Through these steps, others began to feel empowered. Volunteers for scouts were chosen to go out and begin looking for a new home. Upon their return, the scouts were well fed at their Tribute to Our Heroes Day, and they spoke of all their adventures off of the iceberg. So they came back with good news for possible new homes, which acted as their short-term win for the colony regarding their change. The leaders moved quickly to send out a second wave of scouts in order to decide on their next home. It was important for the movement to not lose its momentum so that the move could not be put off until it was too late or next year or anything like that. So a moving date was selected, and then preparations were made, and the colony moved to a new iceberg. Once they had settled in their new iceberg, other changes then had to follow. The way the colony had been organized no longer worked for their new lifestyle. Scouting became a regular occurrence, and the colony continued to look for more and more suitable homes, never settling in one place for too long, and always continuing to prepare for the future. As I think about this story and how it applies to changes that I see happening in schools, the penguins really dealt with the change in a methodical and would end up being a very successful manner. On the topic of technology in schools, I've seen many examples of leaders simply saying, here it is. You have a smartboard, new laptops, other technology, other equipment. Use it. And I think that if some of the administrators I've worked with had handled the implementation of technology in as well-planned a manner as the penguins did, teachers would be a lot more open to the change, especially teachers that have become very set in their ways. I think we have all worked with a no-no at some point in our careers, who, by the way, I love his obvious name, while all the other penguins in the colony have normal names. People who do not want to change under any conditions. I think by following steps outlined in this story, many people would be much more comfortable with the idea of changing. The unknown can be very scary, and the better the plan that is established, the better people are going to react to change. The following is a recording of the author, John Cotter, speaking about his fable, Our Iceberg is Melting. Thank you.
I'm John Cotter, and just to be clear at the beginning, I recognize that this must look, to most of you, pretty absurd. This is indeed a stuffed bird. It's an emperor penguin, but it's, and this is a prop because it's not freezing in here. This is a nice studio at 68 degrees, so why are we doing this? Well, Holger Rathgaber and I have recently written a book that's called Our Iceberg is Melting. And the book is about a penguin colony in Antarctica, emperor penguins, like our friend here. And the book also is, in a sense, kind of silly, but the purpose of the book and the lessons of the book couldn't be more serious. The basic structure of the story is this. It's a fable, takes 45 minutes to read. There's this middle-level penguin in the colony who starts to notice that something's wrong. He's a very curious guy. There seems to be a piece of the iceberg they lived on and have lived on for generations over here that has disappeared. And so because he's curious, he starts looking around and he discovers some very disturbing evidence that the iceberg could be melting. And worse yet, and it's a long story, but what it boils down to, he discovers that the iceberg is melting in a way that it could literally break apart during the dead of winter when it is literally dark down there about 24 hours a day with catastrophic consequences. But he's not a boss. He can't order anybody. He has no credibility as a forecaster of the weather. And people aren't inclined to listen to somebody who worries. And the book is about what Fred did. It's a book about change, a book about a changing world and how you can change with it or not change. And in this little fable, we have put all of the very, very real problems that we've found when studying organizations in the real world, the problems they run into when they have difficulty even seeing change, the problems they run into when they try to deal with it, and we put in the most clever of solutions that we've seen real people come up with, so that at the end they really achieve something terrific. They end up in better condition than when they started. And our penguins in this story, as it turns out, are like that, those guys that do great. They're very, very clever penguins. And the book is written as a fable because I'm convinced that more and more and more people have to understand how the world is changing, the need for change, how change works when it works well, or organizations are going to have a heck of a time adapting to an increasingly turbulent environment that we find out there. And the rate of change is not going to slow down. The evidence is overwhelming about that. And this little fable, which puts a bit of a smile on most people's faces and is interesting and fun to read, we hope, and we have evidence at least so far, that a lot of people will read it. It will change the nature of a conversation in an organization. It will get issues out. It will get people from below initiating more. It will reduce the anxiety level around what change might do to you. And in the process, it will help speed up in a useful way any change that you're embarking upon, whether it's a new strategy or process engineering or integration of an acquisition. It doesn't matter. This little kind of silly thing can do a lot of this. And that's why I want to bring it to your attention. That's why Fred wants to bring it to your attention. And as I said, I know this looks a little strange, and so does the book, by the way. But you'd be surprised what it can do. That's right, right? He said yes.